So you had your first Telluride this year, and you also had your first. Did you go to the Governor's Awards before?
I didn't go. I was years ago. I was nominated for Academy Award. I don't know if it's required. If I don't know. Oh no, because it happened so before the nominations. No, the answer is no. I'd never been. But that was really great. I wasn't sure what to expect.
What is the feeling in the room? What for you? Like
Frederick Weissman.
Like with your colleagues, with the community, just that sense.
I've been thinking a lot about the community these days and realizing how many good friends I have and people just you run into and how much I like them all and it's not talked about too much, I guess, because there's so much other noise around celebrity and the movie industry and stuff, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a lot of really great people, and I've liked getting to know them, and then there are the people like Frederick Weissman and who whose work is out there, and I didn't know, I'd never come across, and I'd never that's. It's something else. So that event I get to see, was good to learn a little bit about some people I didn't know, and to see them be honored, and to see how moved they were, and to think about how casting directors are such an important part of the process, and they aren't acknowledged most of the time in this season of 1,000 awards, and they ought to be. I can think of a lot of casting directors who have really discovered some great talents from nowhere and helped build careers. So it's nice to be included in the community, but ever since I've been young, since when I started when I was 18, I've always felt like people were inclusive. It's a hard industry to break into on the one hand, but whenever you meet people who are working in the industry, they're always very inclusive. The first movie I did was with Gus Van Sant, and he became a close friend of mine. But from the first day, first time I auditioned for him, all the way through that process, he never said, "Look, kid, I've made so many movies and I've had so much success, and I want you to do it my way." He was always really interested in what I thought and what I wanted to do, and same with Buck Henry, who wrote it and was playing a part in it, who'd been around forever and been a part of MASH, which is a TV series.
To Die For.
To Die For. I didn't even know all of the things that Buck had done and all the stuff that, how I'd seen his work as a kid. I wasn't even aware of his connection to all that stuff. And I made up a line in some scene. I just improvised. I didn't know any better. I didn't know to be respectful in the way you're like, well, this Buck Henry wrote this, I'm going to learn the lines exactly as they are. Instead, I was constantly throwing things in and interjecting, and he could have easily, put me in my place. And instead, he said, "That was amazing. Say that thing again. What else you got?" And and Nicole Kidman, the same thing. She was married to Tom Cruise. She was a giant movie star, in her own right, and she. Was really patient with Joaquin and I. Joaquin Phoenix was in the movie, and so right from the beginning, it's been it felt like a group of people I wanted to be around, and now I've been doing it for. I know some people have been doing it for a lot longer, but I've been doing it for 23 years, and there's so many people who I've come to love.
It struck me that perhaps this movie presented you with a very high degree of difficulty, that you needed all that experience of 23 years to jump over that pole, that you did it, but it must have felt like a pretty tall leap when you faced it in the beginning.
Yeah, I know. I guess that any job that you do sort of requires a certain amount of experience and know-how and understanding of what is being asked of you, and also some degree of ignorance and arrogance just to think that you can even get through it. Otherwise you would just go, forget it, I can't, there's no way, I'm not up to it, because you don't see clearly all of the challenges and just how hard it is. It makes me sort of gives me the courage to step into it and begin. And once you've started, there's no turning back.
And you knew Lonergan. You had done a play with him. This Is Our Youth.
Yeah.
Was that when you first met him?
That was when I first met him, but I knew of him because everybody knew of his plays. Everyone in my generation knew of him and wanted to work with him. And, you know, it was always, we're waiting for the next Kenny Lonergan play, like you wait for the next installment of the, like, Stephen King thing. You know, I remember those are the... feeling the same way as I did when I would read The Green Mile, and you had to wait like 4 months for the next chapter to come out. And we would do it. For my friends, some of us, we would read his plays out loud. You know, he was like someone we all none of us knew, but we admired. And I auditioned for Lobby Hero. I auditioned for This Is Our Youth. I didn't even get a call back from that guy. And so, I guess to answer your question about sort of needing all the experience and bringing all that experience to bear on this project, I guess things sort of, you're matched up with things when you're ready, you know, and I was really waiting to do a movie with Kenny, and when this one came along, I got my shot. And had I not had kids, I wouldn't have been able to do this part. There's a lot of things in my life
How old are your kids?
12 and 8. And you know, all the failures that I had before also make you better and more ready to do the thing that you're doing. You know, everything that's happened made me feel like, okay, now I can rise to the occasion.
It may be very difficult for you to describe this, and I understand that, but I think the thing that I keep sort of going back to as I think about this is how to play a character who's shut down and still make it interesting. Now, you have words, but not that many words, really.
Uh-huh.
I mean, when you're interacting with the nephew or the brother, you know, there's plenty, or Michelle, there's stuff to work with, but there's a lot of quiet, depressed sadness.
Yes. There's a lot of that stuff between the words. It's funny you say that, though, because when I got the script, I thought, oh man, that's a lot of words. There's a lot of words to learn. I knew what it was to make a movie on an independent film schedule. I thought, I have to learn every single one of these words, and I knew that Kenny is very, very careful with the words that he chooses, and that it means a lot to him, that it's I instead of me, that it's instead of ah, and so I knew I had to memorize all those words. Now the movie does. People have said before, geez, there's a lot done in the silences, or there's a lot between the words or whatever, and I guess there is, and it felt like, because the words are, you know, he's very curt with his nephew, he's very like terse. It's not, the words aren't super expressive. He's not talking about what we all know is going on inside of him, and so you have to communicate what is going on inside of him without using the words. The words are, how do I open the garage door? What do you want for food? Where can I drop you off? Those are the conversations, but so much more is happening. And so those are the kind of conversations that Kenny and I had about how do we communicate that? When is he emotionally expressive? And but I never thought of him as being shut down, because it just wasn't an active thing to do, and I felt like it would have become boring and not let anyone understand anything about him. And in fact, in many of those scenes, he is really very active. He's trying to control the whole situation. I think a word for him, other than shut down, might be he's tight, controlling. He's he wants to control the conversation so that it doesn't become personal, and so that he doesn't have to deal with anybody's expectations or their opinions of him, and he doesn't have to think about his past, and he makes sure that the conversation never goes in a way in which he is going to be required to address things that are just too painful for him to face. So in the scene with the doctor, he just said, ordinarily someone might express some grief in that moment and ask questions that are about, geez, how did my brother die? How long did it take? Things that stem from an emotional reaction, just having heard that your brother died. His questions are, where do I have to take the body? How am I going to transport it there? Do you know the name of someone who transports bodies? It's just, I'm not I'm gonna drive the conversation, and I'm gonna keep it just on the surface, very practical, and then and that's how I'm gonna get through this. The same is true with the kid, as much as possible. More or less, he says, "Your dad died. Okay, you're gonna come stay with me for this period. What do I need to feed you? What do you want? How am I gonna take care of you? Do you need food right now? It's time for you to go to bed?" They're all just sort of basic caretaking. I'm not going to think about the emotional situation that's happening here.
Then there's the scene that you guys, I understand, pushed back as long as you could with Michelle Williams as your ex-wife, where you can't deal with what she wants to do, which is to reconnect with you and talk to you.
Yes.
That's an amazing scene.
I guess the way that scene is connected to everything I just said, and why it's different also, is that he tries to, if it were anyone but her, he would say, "I'm sorry, I don't have time to speak to you," or whatever, and move on. But he would, or in his own way, he would control that situation. But he just cannot bear the thought of hurting her feelings in any way. So he's just apologizing. But he also cannot bear to talk to her or to have lunch with her. She's saying, "Have lunch with me," and he says, I can't have lunch with you because I can't do it. I just can't, because I can't think about all the things that happened. I'll fall apart. I'll die. I can't." And so, but he also, more than anything in the world, does not want to make her think that he's angry at her or to reject her in any way or anything. So it's a collision of these two strong feelings he's having, and so he has to just excuse himself and walk away.
So I understand you like to try things lots of different ways, or at least do things many times.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how maybe that works for you?
Well, I guess that the fun part is being on the set and doing the between action and take, and that amounts to about cumulatively 20 minutes or 30 minutes any given day on a movie, because you don't shoot that much. Action, cut, that was 20 seconds there, and then it all adds up to not that much. So that is, and then there's the conversations with the director about, well, what's going to happen between action and cut? What if I were to be drinking a cup of coffee and would it change the dynamic between me and the person I'm talking to, and just exploring that. I don't know why it's so interesting. I guess that's why I like being an actor, is just thinking about why people behave and what it says about them and how they're revealing parts of themselves that they don't know that they're revealing. So there are a lot of different ways to do things. Even something that is written so beautifully, and so the way Kenny writes, especially this, it's really mysterious why it's so good. I can't quite. It doesn't follow a formula. It doesn't use any tricks, and it just tells a story. And I find it every single time I read it, and the couple times I've seen it, to be really effective. And I hate usually watching stuff that I'm in, because it seems like a Frankenstein version of some other experience that I had. I think that the what was the question?
Trying it over and over again.
Yeah, so I like to try it over and over again, because I'm sort of holding on to those precious few moments when we're actually there. We spent months and months leading up to it, and now we're there, and I want to do it, and there's 100 ways to do it, and you never really know which one's going to work best, because it's all just, it's a miracle that it ever works. And so I want to just do it as much as I can until they drag me off the set.
How did you guys handle the switches in time? That must have been kind of tricky, because you're a different person in all these different time frames. You're the same person,
right?
But you've gone through different levels of things.
Yeah. Well, there's really just two big shifts in this, sort of before this tragedy in his life and after. And by and large, he's the same person after. And that was where the biggest challenge for playing the character was finding the person after this tragedy. This guy who tried to kill himself, who was never going to forgive himself, who was going to carry this huge amount of guilt around forever because he thought that that's what he deserved. And how do you, and he doesn't talk about it, and so how does it communicate it? It was that was kind of what when I first time I thought about the script, the first time I talked to Kenny, that's what we were looking at. And the other part was this guy who was very, very different, but in some ways I guess a little bit easier to play because not quite as complicated, and also was more expressive and was having a good time. Anytime we got to do those scenes, it was fun. It was like a break from playing the hard work of doing the movie.
I loved that day when you all go out on the boat with the kid and your brother. And
yeah.
It's just great. It's great stuff.
Yeah, it was
with all
really
of you
fun.
goofing around.
Anytime you get a kid like that on set, it's always a blast because it's an excuse to start improvising and making things up. So you're like, Kenny, the kid, he just didn't know the lines. I was just winging it. Any other time, he would yell if he was made up one, even cleared your throat and it wasn't scripted. Kenny's going to yell at you. So you get the kid on the boat and you can just start rambling.
So you've got some interesting things coming up, and I'm curious about them. And by the way, one of my favorite movies of yours, I hated when I first saw it.
Oh.
I loathed it. It was at Sundance.
Whatever it is, I agree with you.
It was Jerry.
Uh-huh.
And then I never forgot it.
Why?
I never forgot that movie, and I realized it was brilliant.
Why?
Because it was repeated and repeated, and it ground itself into your brain in this sort of repetitive, bizarre,
Like Chinese water torture.
horrible way.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is that not one of your favorite movies? It must have been horrible to shoot, actually.
Oh my God, it was amazing to shoot. Why
really?
would it be horrible?
Oh, just because you're
It
in
was
the
like a
desert
hike.
in the middle of the...
Like taking a 2-month hike. That was one of my favorite experiences, actually.
Why?
Because it was such an experiment, and it was so completely, it was really liberating. We went into it, we wrote this, started with a song. The three of us were having lunch, and we heard a song. And then Gus told a story about these guys, a true story he'd heard, and that was all we had.